welcome to the first episode, episode 1 of the Sim Racing Perspective podcast. And I'm here with Mike from SimRacing604.
Good morning.
And Alex from The Extra Mile.
What's up, guys?
And I'm your host, Davy Jones. We'll begin by introducing how this podcast came about. I created my channel some time ago, and then I started uploading some videos with audio, and I dropped a message to Mike, and Mike complimented me on my videos. Thank you very much, Mike, by the way. And Mike gave the idea that, for example, if you're ever interested in collaborating, give me a shout. So I started to think about how we could collaborate somehow. So then Alex, it was your video. You did a video on Forza 7, the list of cars in Forza 7, and I realized Alex is so passionate and knows his stuff. And then I was thinking, hold on, and Mike, you have your angle with the kind of passion about F1, if I'm correct, and Alex, you have your kind of passion. And I thought with the fact that the different angles that we have, you guys have the equipment and the games you play, and the equipment and the games I play. I thought it might make a good mix, and then hence the title of the Sim Racing Perspectives podcast. So I thought we would all give our own different perspectives on sim racing games and hardware, and why it is that we sim race to begin with. So that's the basics genesis. So we're here together live, and we're trying to get this started and see how we go. So we'll start, if I may, with Alex. So Alex, can you explain to the guys, how did you get into sim racing?
Yeah, that is a loaded question, of course. I will try to keep this as short as possible. Ever since since I could talk, basically, or walk or think, basically, my passion was about cars. My first word was cars, which made my mom really happy and proud, of course. Okay. And when the first racing games came along back in the 80s on the C64, it was, I believe, I knew that this was my kind of thing. So I kind of stayed with it over the years, over the decades. I got my first racing wheel in sometime in the 90s for Grand Prix Legends, which I played excessively back then in the day. And yeah, so I kind of stayed with it. Driving is my passion, not only on the PC or on the console, but in real life as well. I just enjoy everything about it. So
okay,
that was kind of my hook.
And have you driven competitively in real life as well, or?
A little bit, not really on a professional level, but I've done some track days, I've done some driver trainings, and back in the day when I did the first ones, they actually timed the laps, which is not allowed anymore for insurance reasons.
Yes.
But it was, I have some experience on a track, and there will be more of that coming to my channel this year.
Oh, cool.
I'm planning some good stuff there.
And have you driven the Nürburgring Nordschleife?
Oh, yes, quite a bit. I've done driver's training there in 2004, I believe it was.
Oh, really?
And before that and after that, I've driven there on my own back then with a Golf diesel, actually. I started with a Golf diesel and just drove there and drove a few laps. And yeah, it's amazing. The track is like nothing else. The first time I drove there, I still remember that very vividly, how wide the track seems, how my heart was pumping all throughout the laps. I still, the G-forces are the biggest difference, in my opinion, between sim racing and real driving.
Yes.
You have so many elevation changes on that track. So many compressions where you're really driving at high speed through compression, and it's quite exhausting physically. So even driving there for one lap is you just need a little break after that and catch your breath a little bit, and yeah, I love it. It's an awesome track. I have seen quite a lot of accidents, quite a lot of crazy stuff on there, but so far, knock on wood, I never had an accident there. I don't plan to having one anytime soon.
And you're having plenty of virtual accidents now, of course, so that's okay.
Yeah. Those are enough for me.
And then And when and why did you decide to create your YouTube channel? Why did you create? How and why did you get into creating videos?
Yeah, that was a bit of an accident, actually. I came out of my old job, which I had for a long time, which was quite stressful. I came out of the hotel business, and I don't want to get too much into that, but let's just say it was a great time, but it also was a very stressful time. And back in 2016, I decided to get out of it. And for various reasons, I still had to stay in that location for a while.
Yeah.
But I did not have to work every day. So I thought, what could I do to fill the time? I don't want to just stay at home here every day. I need to do something. So kind of just for fun at first, I started the YouTube channel, not really knowing where it would go. And for the first weeks or month, actually, it didn't go anywhere. I made videos and it got like 5 or 6 views or something. And
I know the feeling right now.
Yeah, probably 4 of those views were myself.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wasn't really sure where it was going, but then I don't really know why or how it started to pick up a little bit at least. And I got a lot of encouragement relatively early on from a lot of viewers. And I looked into how much views you have to get to actually live off of YouTube.
Yes.
And I thought, okay, I still have a long way to go, and that is still true today. But I thought it's not impossible to do it. And I sold my apartment in my old place, so I have a little bit of buffer, so to speak.
Yes.
In a financial sense. So I thought, all right, let's just give this a shot. Let's just try it and try to turn my passion, which is cars and driving, into an income in some way. So that's how the channel got started, and I still have some major changes planned for this year.
Yeah.
And we will see how it will go. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm still having a lot of fun with it. I can arrange my days as I see fit, which is big plus in comparison to my old life and my old job. So that turned out quite well so far.
And if I may comment, it was for me actually, it was your recent Forza video, and I was doing a video. I did a series about Carroll Shelby and the Ford GT, and actually I included a clip from your video in my video, just a little clip, a couple of seconds, and you were talking about the cars, and I noticed you went through the list, and you were talking about the different cars, and you knew what everything was, and I said to myself, there's something here about this guy. It's the passion that kind of grabbed me. I think that was the thing for me that just in that particular moment, and I could see kind of where you were coming from, and I realize it now that you're talking. And then, can you tell us something about the name? It's like I've been so familiar with the name right now. It's like Coke and Nike. It's like a second nature. But where did the name come from?
Oh, that's actually a pretty funny story. I think this name, The Extra Mile, is about I don't know, it's number 52nd or something, 52 on the list of the names that I've tried. I wanted to get a name that is easily recognizable, that you could remember. I didn't want something like driving 82 dash something. I wanted something that, it just rings, it just has a good sound to it.
Yes.
It has positive connotations to it. I think the extra mile, I think of going the extra distance, of maybe adding an extra mile an hour on the straight. There are several connections that I could make to driving and racing. And I've tried to register a lot of names before that, but all of them were taken. YouTube is not it's not a new platform anymore. And most of the good names, or what I would have considered to be good names, were already taken.
Yeah.
But then I think after probably almost half a week of trying, it went for 2 or 3 or 4 days, and me laying awake at night and thinking about possible names and trying them out and seeing that they're already taken. I had a brainwave. I still remember that I kind of sat up in my bed at 3 in the morning and said, wait a second, the extra mile, that could actually work. And I tried it. It wasn't taken. And that's how that came to be.
Okay, and it's good. It's kind of, I kind of see it as synonymous with you and your kind of approach, because you kind of like go the extra mile. You kind of, and you, I notice, for example, in your videos that where you usually start, you're in the VR mode, you're outside the car, you're having you always start with like, let's have a look at this beauty, you know, and then you kind of, you get inside and then you start, and it's always seemed that you're kind of not over the top, but really you can feel the passion that I as the viewer can feel the passion that you have about
oh, that's awesome. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, that's how that's my feeling. And I think the name, I think it's a good name, and I know the feeling. I know exactly what you're talking about, lying in bed at 3 a.m. and thinking about, wait a minute, that was a good idea, no, that was a silly idea, and so on. So very a very apt name. So now we have Mike here as well, Mike from SimRacing604. So Mike, like the same question to you as to Alex, how did you get into sim racing?
Well, I don't know how to follow up somebody who's driven the Nordschleife. I feel like we should have let Alex go last. I have much more humble beginnings to my sort of foray into sim racing. Mine is much more virtual. I don't have any real world racing experience, actually. Mine has all just been, well, I mean, growing up in Canada, it's not a very racing centric culture. We have an F1 race that goes to Montreal, but Montreal is, I don't know, 4,000 kilometers away from where I am.
Yeah.
So it's just not heavy on racing really. But so I started out, I remember, and Alex, I was glad to hear you mention Commodore 64, because I think we're probably somewhere around the same age. Sometimes I feel very old in the world of sim racing, but
we won't talk numbers, Mike.
I think that's for the best.
Yeah.
I think that's for the best. But I remember, I was thinking about this the other day. I remember my first sort of, it's not sim racing, but my first racing game, I want to say, was Need for Speed, probably on about a 386 computer.
Wow.
And I remember staying up late at night, living with my parents, of course, and the platform was so old that all I had was PC speaker. Okay, didn't even have a sound card, nothing. And my parents would be upstairs sleeping, and I would be playing Need for Speed all night using the arrow keys on my keyboard to drive it. And I remember having to put a pillow over the PC speaker to not wake my parents.
Yeah.
So I think just sort of a snapshot in time of how far back I go with racing games. That's probably a good idea. But as far as sim racing itself, I know it's controversial, but Gran Turismo was really my entry into the world of sim racing, where it started to matter, you know, the specifications of the car you're driving, and you know, say what you will about Gran Turismo, it had a major influence on the sim racing culture, I think, and myself, I was definitely part of that culture. I loved Gran Turismo. I've owned every single Gran Turismo official release, you know, not the prologues, but 1 through 6 and now Sport. And I just remember logging hundreds and hundreds of hours into these games and you know, through various console iterations and that kind of thing. And then when I got my PlayStation 4, I remember thinking that you know, it was disappointing that they didn't have a Gran Turismo yet. And so I bought Project Cars, and it was, you know, again, another controversial sim. Is it a sim? Is it a racing game? But I logged so many hours into that game, and it just kind of opened up a new world to me. And then, and this is actually very recent where I got into sim racing. So console got Assetto Corsa, and I remember I couldn't wait for it. It had this cool Ferrari on the cover, and I couldn't wait to drive it. And then downloaded it and started to drive, and I was missing every single corner. And it was driving me crazy. And I was thinking, how the heck does anybody drive this game? And so I started doing some research. And if you look up Assetto Corsa online and you're new to it, 2 things you get pointed in the direction of. 1 is you should be driving it on PC, and 2 is you should have a wheel. So I went on Craigslist and found a wheel. I found a G29 and went out, bought it used. I think I spent whatever. I don't want to do currency conversions, but I didn't spend much on it, and got it home, and I was still not great. And I just kept working at it. And it was amazing, more than Gran Turismo for sure. And even more than Project Cars, I could really feel sort of myself evolving as a driver.
Yeah.
And so that really attracted me to sim racing for sure. And then eventually I switched over to PC, and yeah, it's just kind of grown from there. But definitely the most influential thing in my, I don't want to call it a career, but my sort of venture into sim racing was Gran Turismo for sure.
And so, sorry, Mike, I was going to ask, and then you mentioned the wheel. So basically, throughout your career, as you said, and let's call it a career with Gran Turismo, you were obviously playing on a pad the whole time.
So, I was.
Okay.
And going back even further, I barely remember. I don't remember the type it was, but I did have a non-force feedback wheel at some point.
Yes.
And I was using it to play some PC-based game. I can't remember what it was, but I remember having a wheel back then, and it was less than impressive. Like, without force feedback, a wheel is, it's not that great. So my G29 was really my first official wheel.
And then, when did you decide, like Alex, when did you decide to start creating videos and get onto YouTube and get involved in the community? When did that start?
I think my first video was early March of last year.
Yes.
So it's a comparatively new channel. And I had uploaded a few just random, I think it was either Grand Theft Auto 5 or something like that, videos from my PlayStation. But my first sim racing video, as far as I know, was a what was I driving? The MP46, the McLaren MP46.
Yes.
And I remember just sim racing had become my passion. This thing had exploded inside me. I was just loving it. And then I was like, I want to I got into PC sim racing, and I found out about mods, and the MP46 just kind of blew my mind. Like, I'm driving virtually the same car that Ayrton Senna drove. It just was so amazing to me. And so I had to upload a video more or less for myself to watch, during downtimes at work or something like that. And so humble beginnings, we're all familiar with it. I uploaded it, and I didn't think anybody would ever watch it, of course, and quite frankly, nobody did. I think to this day it has 130 views or something.
Yes.
And much like you, Alex, it was probably mostly me. I think probably 125 of those were me. But I don't know. I just kind of kept at it, and I kept uploading videos that I would want to watch. Like if I did a lap at Red Bull Ring or something like that, I would just go ahead and upload it, and then I could look back on it and listen to the cool sounds and things like that. And I don't know, I can't trace it back to any sort of spark that kind of took me to the next level, but I was also looking at monetization, you need 10,000 channel views. And I think those who are new to YouTube won't understand this, but 10,000 views was the magic mark as of 6 months ago. And now it's much more strict, of course. You need 1,000 subs, and I think
4,000 hours in the last 12 months. Yes.
Yeah, that's so strict. Yeah. That's so strict compared to what we had. So I set the goal of getting 10,000 channel views, and it's kind of embarrassing to look back on now, but I did do some clickbaity type videos, clever titles that would get people to watch. But that's all in the past now. But like I say, there was no definite spark where I just, all of a sudden the channel was big. It was just kind of a progressive growth, and somehow now I almost have 6,000 subscribers. So it's really been
great. It's really great.
Wild.
Yeah. And something you said that struck with me, that you like to kind of create create the content that you like, and also watch your own videos, and I get that from your channel, and I think that's very important. I think especially now with a lot of the crazy things that have been happening with YouTube and channels taken down and so on, I think it's very important that you make content that you like, and then eventually, or hopefully somebody will come across it and pick up on that. And I think that's why I get the feeling from both of you guys, that you're kind of creating the content that first and foremost that you like to create. And then
exactly.
If
it took me a long... I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say, you hit the nail on the head. It took me a long time to sort of realize it. Like I said, I was chasing 10,000 views, and then I was chasing whatever other goal, and it was just, I was chasing numbers, and that's not what you want to base a channel on, really. So It took me a long time, but eventually I did realize that, like you say, you just have to make videos that you yourself would want to watch. The other day, I uploaded a video of it was a turbo sound. Okay, Automobilista, they released a turbo mod for their Kart Extreme car series.
Yes.
And I thought it sounded so amazing. So I didn't even bother with commentary, nothing like that. I just loved the sound of this engine, and I thought others might enjoy it as well. So I just uploaded this video. And then I realized that that's an evolution of myself, because if I was chasing views, I would, have to put some sort of commentary to it and explain what the mod is, blah, blah, blah. But I'm really just doing things now that make me happy, things that I like. And if the views come, great. If not, I'm doing something I'm proud of either way. And Alex, I want to say, I really feel that with your channel as well. I really feel the passion. Like, it's really awesome to watch you drive. You're an awesome driver. And I just really feel sort of the energy of you driving. You seem to really, really enjoy yourself. So I just wanted to put that out there. That I really enjoy your channel.
Exactly.
It's a good point. Yeah. It's a good point you're making, though, Mike, because I felt that it's very important to record videos that I actually want to record in the first place, where I'm actually having fun on a true and authentic level. At some point, it's relatively easy to get a little bit burned out on a game when you're doing like 20 or 25 or 30 Assetto Corsa videos in a row. It's relatively easy to, or at least it was for me, to get a little bit burned out, where you say, oh my God, not another Assetto Corsa session today. So I always try to find something, and that's nothing against Assetto Corsa, by the way. No. I still love it. But I thought I learned that it's very important to choose something to record that is a little bit different once in a while, and where I actually have a lot of fun with it. So, and it's awesome to hear that at least partially comes across in the video.
Very much so. And Mike, what about the channel name, SimRacing604? Where did it come from?
Again, it's tough to follow Alex. He spent sleepless nights thinking of his. Mine is just my telephone area code.
Oh, really?
I wish I had something more exciting than that. It actually, when I first got into watching YouTube videos of sim racing, Ferrariman601 was one of the channels that I really clung to. I think he has an amazing channel to this day. Yeah. And I didn't want to dedicate myself to a brand like he did, but it's very generic. It's sim racing and then my telephone area code. So.
Oh, cool. That's original.
And I guess so.
Yeah, and it's easy to remember.
It's easy to remember. And the good news with it is that it's not taken anywhere. Like, you can imagine with my name being Mike Smith, I don't get anything. It's taken everywhere. I can't get email addresses that are anywhere close to my name. But SimRacing604 is not taken anywhere, of course. No. So, yeah.
That's the thing. Yeah. And then I suppose, like, again, I have no, the same with you, Mike, with relation to Alex. Like, I myself have no track driving experience either. And I kind of, like, you talked about your first game on the Commodore. I'm from Ireland originally. I've been living in Finland now nearly the last 15 years or so. And my first game was on a competitor to the Commodore 64 at the time, the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. And I had this. I had this. I have a blog. I wrote a blog post about it, and it's on the blog I have, where I hopefully be posting audio version, a version of this podcast. And basically, it was Grand Prix. Oh God, what was it called? And actually, when I was writing the blog, I was trying to find it, and I found a video of it on YouTube in color, and I was watching it in black and white because I had the computer hooked to a black and white TV, because that's all I had, and I never questioned it. And all I knew that it was in, as far as I was concerned, it was in black and white. And like you, Mike, I was playing with arrows, and I distinctly remember the 8 or 16-bit sound. That was it, you know. Yeah. And I wrote this in the blog. I always remember thinking, why is it that the games don't look like they do on the cover art? You know, that was the thing for me. And maybe I was just a kid. I didn't question it. But then I'm kind of a late start, if you will, because I never, we when we were kids, my mom bought us a Sega machine. We had Donkey Kong and we had Tapper and Zaxxon, some of the games, but I was never actually able to find what specific machine it was. And then after my nephew had a PlayStation, and I can remember when the first Grand Theft Auto appeared in the 90s, but I never personally owned an Xbox or a PlayStation, so I was kind of late. And then at one point a few years ago, I was working in a place, and then I was made redundant, and I had some spare time, and I installed Steam on a PC. I had the PC; it's now dead, but long story. But and I installed Steam, and I saw this Dirt 3, you see, and my wife is my wife is from west of Finland, and where her parents live, they actually live close to Marcus Grönholm, the Finnish rally driver. And so it was kind of like rally and here, and I was kind of interested in that, and I kind of wanted to know more. So I got into Dirt 3, and then from that Dirt Rally came along, and I also wrote about this in the blog, that, and I started to follow the guys on Twitter, and then I have a design and illustration background, so for me it was kind of the way that the computers were getting faster, and they were able to simulate that. There was the 3D models of the cars, there was the audio, there was the graphics, and then I was following Paul Coleman, the lead designer on Dirt Rally, on Twitter, and I loved how when they were doing Dirt Rally, it was in early access, and they would do the dirt shows, and they would iterate as they went along, and then of course Dirt Rally then went to full release, and it went on Xbox One and PlayStation 4, but I loved the whole process. And then by them adding features to the game, I learned about, you know, front wheel drive and rear wheel drive and all wheel drive, because I had very little knowledge, and it kind of started from there. And then at one point, actually, in terms of me getting a wheel, I had an Xbox pad, and then Dirt Rally came along, and I said, okay, now I need to get a wheel. So I found a used Logitech Driving Force GT, and then I bought that, and I loved it. And then I decided to upgrade when I had some money to spend, and I'm now driving a T300, and I posted a video on my channel about the issues I had. I'm currently on my third wheel, my third T300 base. It's a long story. So I went from Dirt 3 to Dirt Rally. Then, like Mike says, Assetto Corsa came along, and then there was R Factor, and then I don't know what it was. I started to read Race Department, and I started to find some channels. I found Empty Box and Jimmy Broadbent, and I don't know. It just kind of started from there. And I often find that, I don't know how it is for you guys, but people walk into the house, maybe a guest comes for a kid's birthday party or whatever, and they'll say, look, what is that in the corner? What are you doing? You know, and then you maybe invite them to come in and sit down, and maybe you start the game with default. Maybe there's no assists on, and they end up like spinning out into a corner, you know, and it's kind of like they get it, but they don't. But for me, I think like with you guys, it's the passion behind it. It's the kind of the community behind it, and I've learned so much more about the community. And I've been reading about guys like Magnus Walker and these guys who, you know, and piece like the Group B and the Group C, and I've just, over the last 3 or 4 years, I've just learned so much. And also from the point of view of, for me, I think that obviously the world of motorsport directly relates to what you can go to a showroom and buy. And for example, the advent of the Tesla and the hybrid cars, and I'm interested in the, how shall I say it, like a 360-degree view of the whole thing, and how for example the auto racing relates to games, and then how auto racing relates to real world cars. And like in Assetto Corsa, you have the street cars and the racing cars, and you have the classic cars, and you see, for example, some racing teams that are no longer there are represented, some tracks that are no longer there are represented, and you can kind of follow, even for example, if you look at like Dirt Dirt 3, as I listed in the blog post I wrote, that Dirt 3 is more arcade, but still is more arcade style, if you will. And if you play it now with a wheel, you can really see how kind of poor it is in a way. But at the time, you didn't really, like, back in the early days, all I had was, you know, this ZX Spectrum with a black and white TV. That's all I had. And you play what you have at the time. And even though Dirt 3 is more arcade, you can still see the history of rally in there, the progression from the 70s to the 80s and so on. And this Subaru and so on. So that's kind of, and like I said, I have been learning, and I'm kind of constantly learning. And then in terms of how I got started with the channel, well, I uploaded some Dirt Rally plays, some gameplay, and then I uploaded some race room gameplay. And at one point it was kind of, like many people have said, well, the easiest way to start is just to get started. And then it was kind of like, well, enough is enough. And I had a microphone. I bought a microphone for some work purposes, and I kind of, I figured out this part and I figured out that part, and I said, well, let's start it now. And my channel, I've done some sim racing stuff, but I've also done some other stuff, and back to the whole point, the whole kind of angle of creating content that you like. That's what I just thought, well, I want to create the content that I like. So I have a mix of stuff on my channel. Like there's some PC tutorial stuff, there's some sim racing stuff, whatever. I've come to the conclusion that I just want to make content that I want to, like you guys said, I want to make content that I'm interested in. And even like I created a video, and then I would, like some of my videos, the series I did about Carroll Shelby, and then I rendered it, and I just sat back and watched it, and I thought to myself, well, this is okay. And if
it's fantastic,
if somebody else,
it's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Very proud of that.
If somebody thinks that's okay, then you know. And a funny story actually, in the I did in episode 3. In episode 2, I was talking about the Shelby Daytona, and I had some notes, and I didn't want it to be like a documentary, just some notes. And then I had published the second video, and then I came across another video from Shelby in the US, and it was all this information, and I realized that, oh no, a lot of the stuff I wrote about Peter Brock in the second episode was incorrect. So I had to add a prologue to the third one to kind of correct the notes that I correct the information that I had added in the second episode. But that was, I just thought, well, out of respect to the guys who were involved in it, and I mentioned like the guys like Peter Miles from the UK, who had survived World War II and then became a racing driver, and told his story, and like I said in the first video, the character, there were kind of different characters. They were the post World War II hot rodders, and they all had different experiences, and they reminded me of my father in a way. So and that's how I fell in love with the kind of story, and then I looked and I said, hold on a second, I said to Corsa, and Jimmy Broadbent had done a GT40 video, and there was the Le Mans track from 1967, and if I can source some versions of those cars, maybe I can tell a story. So that's kind of how it happened. So I just take it from there. So
I really like that approach, that you kind of pick a topic, and such a great topic as Carroll Shelby. I mean, he's one of the legends in automotive history, I would say, right? So
yeah, I think that Ford Ferrari rivalry, you know, I guess it was the late 60s, was one of the greatest stories in motorsport history. It really was.
And I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and exactly. And I knew the name of Carroll Shelby, but like in my innocence, I didn't know really what it referred to. I know there was a Ford with Carroll Shelby's name on it, but I didn't know the story. And then Jimmy Broadbent did a video on the GT40 that's in the Ford GT that's in Assetto Corsa, and then I came across the Ford and Ferrari battle, and then it just kind of organically kind of went from there. So that's how. And the name, obviously, well, my name. Obviously the name is I created the channel using my name, and my name is David. Obviously my friends at one point started to call me Davy, and actually David Bowie, the late great David Bowie, his real name is actually David Jones, and he changed his name because at one point because he thought the name was boring, and funnily enough, and actually David Jones in Australia, and I guess Michael from Single Racer in Melbourne will know that David Jones in Australia is like a high-end department store chain. So my name is like you, Mike. My name is also common. So I just thought, well, I was going with a name, and I thought, well, what will I do? How do I kind of represent myself? And then I thought, okay, well, I just go with my name because I was using my own name on Twitter, and I just went with that. And like I said, I just create content that I want to create, and my name isn't synonymous with any particular genre, but so I just create what I want to create. And if somebody likes it, they like it, and I just go from there, you know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're now at we've been talking for about half an hour or so, and it's been really, really great, and thank you very much. So at this point, for the remainder, do we just want to have a general discussion on sim racing right now, how we are? I mean, we have a list of topics that we'd like to discuss in future, but in terms of, I left this section so we could have a kind of an open discussion on sim racing, and I'm interested in your guys' take on how, for example, sim racing or motorsport in the real world currently relates to sim racing, and how do you feel where we are? Because I was talking to my wife and my kids yesterday, and kind of with F117 becoming an esport, and the WRC game becoming an esport, I feel and also the price of the well, shall I say consumer level wheels, like Jimmy Broadbent says, the pleb wheels, like I have. The price of the the Thrustmaster, the Logitech, the price of those are coming down, and I think I'm under the impression that many people, for example, playing on console, are buying wheels, and you see pictures on Reddit every day of people with their setup, and they have a chair and a wheel and a stand in front of the TV, and away they go. So where do you guys? What are you guys feeling right now? I feel personally that it's growing, and I know that, for example, now it was it January last year we had the Visa Vegas thing in Vegas with R Factor 2, and that it kind of started from there, although that was a bit of a poor showing, I guess. And then you had the then R Factor 2 brought in the Formula E cars, and there was an event, and Sean Cole was there, and Jimmy Broadbent, and it's kind of it's like growing in. And then of course you had the world's fastest gamer, which got a lot of publicity, and you had the winner from the Netherlands. So what any thoughts on how it is now, and is it, for example, the way one final point, and then I'll let you guys continue. It seems that motorsport, the actual viewing of motorsport, let's say from traditional TV, is maybe getting less, and young kids now are maybe not as interested in cars and motorsport as maybe guys of our generation are. So, but yet the esports thing seems to be growing. So maybe it'll come so that maybe the growth in esports will feed back into the real world of motorsport. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think you made quite a few good points there, Davey. I feel like we are seeing the beginnings of a process, at least, where the real world and the virtual world are merging more and more together. You can see it, for example, that real race drivers, not all of them, but quite a few of them actually, learn new tracks or practice tracks in sims.
Yes.
That has been going on for quite a while now. I've just recently seen a blog post or a Reddit post where I don't know which F1 driver it was, but a pretty famous one, showing off his sim racing setup at home. So
yeah, that was Max Verstappen.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think, and I also feel like the viewership on TV is kind of declining for motorsport in general. I remember, at least in my childhood, there was a lot more to see in that regard. A lot more was being broadcasted. And generally speaking, the whole theme of YouTube is watching other people play in generally.
Yes.
Of course, there's more than gaming on YouTube, but you get what I mean. So I think in the future, especially with sim racing becoming even more realistic than it is already in comparison to what we had back in the 80s or early 90s.
Yes.
Especially with sim racing becoming so realistic, I think that esports might be more interesting to watch from a viewer perspective than real sports because
that's interesting.
You can't die in Sims, so maybe the driving itself might be a little bit more risky, a little bit more extreme. Maybe different setups can be chosen than you could in real world, in real life. I don't know. It's an interesting question. It will be cool to see where this is headed. But I have the same feeling that esports in general are a very fast growing market.
How about you, Mike?
Well, I'm equally interested in how the real world affects sim racing because what I've noticed now is that when the specifications of say the 28 Formula 1 cars comes out, it's like a race. What modding team can get out the Formula 1 2018 mod the fastest? Or a couple months, well, I guess was it about a month ago where we had that LMP1 car that was unrestricted and it did that spa lap in minute
the Evo
41 or
yes.
Yeah, the Evo.
Yes.
Thank you. And 2 days later we had that on race department.
Yes,
so it's so
that's true.
It's so fascinating to me that what happens in the real world racing is bleeding immediately to sim racing.
Yes.
And I think that's really awesome because and I know you've driven these cars, Alex. I can't remember the modding team behind them, but it's the Need for Speed pack. And I think there's a Viper and there's a Testarossa and things like that. That to me was the epitome of real world bleeding into sim racing because those are cars I grew up with, having posters on my wall and things like that, and it's so awesome that real world cars bleed into sim racing. So, as far as esports, I don't know how far it's going to go. I think racing of all sports probably lends itself the best to esports. Like, I mean, you can't, I don't think, play basketball or football or anything like that in a game and expect it to translate to real sports. But driving is probably the closest. Driving's probably the closest. So hopefully it has some influence. I know there was one of the racers that was involved in World's Fastest Gamer just got a Formula 4 contract, so that's cool.
Oh, really?
But I can't remember his name, but anyway, it is happening. So that's kind of fascinating. But like I say, I'm equally interested in how it goes the other way too, because most of us will never, what percentage of people, 0.0001 will ever get to drive a Formula 1 car or ever get to drive a GT car or something like that. But for anywhere from a few $100 to a few $1,000s, we can have a setup where we can drive it however we want at whatever track we want.
That is true.
So
and any time of the day or night, that is true. Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Can I ask? Actually, the question just occurred to me. Which actual in terms of real world versus sim racing, which class, which type of racing is your favorite? Mike, I see you seem to be very passionate about F1 cars, both modern and classic. Am I correct?
Or Formula car, definitely. But the funny thing is I'm only recently an F1 fan. Like I used to watch it many years ago, but then I took about 15 years off. Like I just wasn't into Formula 1. But what fascinates me about Formula 1 now is the technology, and that's usually what drives the hate towards Formula 1, because people say it's all about the car and not about the driver, and that may or may not be true.
Yes.
But I'm just I'm a nerd by nature, okay? And I love the technology that goes into these cars. I love, the hybrid technology. A 1.6 liter engine is somehow churning out close to 1,000 horsepower.
Yes.
That to me just blows my mind.
Yeah, that's true.
And I just love hearing about that. And all the active suspensions and kinetic energy release systems and things like that really fascinate me. So as much as the actual sport, as much as I follow Formula 1, it's probably more the technology that Formula 1 is based on that drives my passion, if that makes sense.
And Mike, you talked about the sound of cars earlier, and I completely agree, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But for example, Audi recently did the the GT Sport, the Turismo, the concept car, like the electric car, basically. Sorry, I couldn't remember the name exactly. It slipped my mind. But obviously that car is soundless, and the Formula E cars are soundless. So I wonder, and I know, for example, we've had Audi leave LMP1 and so on, and Porsche. So how then, if the manufacturers are developing hybrid technology and electric technology, obviously that's where the where it's going. And you see a lot of comments where, okay, Formula E, well, if I'm going to watch a Formula E event, I'll have to take a smartphone with me so I can listen to some car sounds. So how I wonder, I see that a lot, but I wonder how then, because it's especially, I mean, at a racing event, it's the experience, and as you guys know, as sim racers, you know, with the headphones on, it's the sound of, and you know, for example, if you have a nice replay running in a Assetto Corsa, you hear like a naturally aspirated Porsche, you hear the roar of the engine as it's coming, you know, over the apex of a hill and away. So I wonder how will they, if audio is such an important thing, how then will they, you know, how will they manage to maintain the attraction? Because the audio part of it is so important, isn't it?
It's a good question. It's a very good question. I don't know how they're going to manage that. Like, I don't consider myself too hung up on sounds. Like Formula One is almost without argument sounding worse than it ever has. If you go back to, you know, the V10 era, it's just mind blowing. Like it just pulls you in. It just speaks to something internally. And you know, these 1.6 liter hybrid turbos, it's you know, it's missing something. But I still love the sport. But with that said, you know, the Formula E cars, the sound is a big reason that I can't follow that sport. I mean, there's a number of other technical concerns, but just the whine, I don't know. So I hear you, Davey, and I don't know how they're going to get past it. And
it comes back to a point made earlier that it's not about the technology. Is it about the technology, or is it about the driver? And then if the balance or performance of the electric cars is so tightly controlled, and the cars are so close to each other, it will have to be about the drivers and how the individual drivers perform. So I think, I'm guessing, Mike, that you're kind of equally split between, let's say, Formula cars and GT cars, GT4, GT3. I guess I get the impression that you're kind of interested in kind of a wide breadth of different classes. Am I correct?
Yeah. I like just about everything. I'm trying to think of a car class that I never really got into, and nothing much really comes to mind. Yeah, in sim racing for sure, any racing class I'm really into. I think when you get into like cars that you might see on the road every day, like a, you know, Toyota GT86 or something like that.
Yes.
I don't know what it's like in Europe, but certainly in Canada, those are commonplace. I could probably walk around my neighborhood and spot 2 or 3 of them. And that's the only spot where I really lose it in sim racing. It just doesn't inspire much in me. Like, to me, sim racing is the fantasy. Again, going back to, you know, sim racing emulating reality. Like it's so cool. These days I'm watching a lot of Blancpain. I've just really picked it up since the announcement of Assetto Corsa Competition.
So have I.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating. And I can't remember my point. Oh yeah, so the fantasy. So it's kind of cool to watch, you know, the Monza Endurance or something like that, and then be able to fire up your favorite game and jump into an actual GT class car. So I don't get that level of fantasy, that level of, you know, holy smokes, I'm driving a cool car here, from a passenger car. So it pretty much has to be a racing car to inspire me.
Yeah, something that you kind of aspire to as a driver. And for you, Alex, I'm guessing as well, are you kind of interested in everything or anything, or do you have something that you kind of that will always kind of grab your attention?
It's interesting because I'm quite often the opposite corner than Mike is. I've always been more interested in road cars. I think I'm trying to think of a reason for why that is exactly, but I think it has to do with the origins of my sim racing career, so to speak. And I'm thinking back to Need for Speed 1, and that is the concept that speaks most to me. Just have a luxury car that I would never drive in real life, a nice open road somewhere through a forest, and just experience that car. And I think that is what sim racing or what I'm looking for in sim racing, to have that experience. I can have a lot of fun with race cars. I do get the attraction of that, but if I had, for example, to drive a lovely Ferrari F40 up the Transfer Garrison Highway,
Yes,
or
in
GT3
Romania,
cars,
yes, yeah.
exactly, or a GT3 car around Monza, or whatever other track, I would always go for the F40. Just and I always love oversteer. I love sliding cars a little bit. I love overdriving cars a little bit. And that's in real life as well. It's just always been my thing. And it's very hard to do that with race cars that have a lot of aero grip and a generally stiffer suspension setup. And so the road cars, my ideal way of driving a car is coming out of a turn, driving sideways, third gear, smoking tires, and just smiling all the way.
Burnout paradise.
Exactly. It's not the fastest way. I know that, but that's my ideal scenario of enjoying a car.
And I think that comes out in your videos as well. And I think Mike will agree that you do a slide and then you start giggling. And I noticed that in your videos.
Yeah.
It comes back to the passion. And I guess for me, I guess I'm a mixture of kind of everything. And now that we've been talking, I think about it that I think maybe from our generation, kids that grew up in like I said earlier, we won't talk numbers, but people who grew up in the 60s, 70s, 80s when computers were only starting, and maybe our generation maybe have the posters on the wall, but I don't know, like the Ferrari F40 and the Porsche 911. Do the kids nowadays, do they have the car posters on the wall? And I know, like, there's lots of channels on YouTube. There's lots of proper channels. There's Donut Media and Supercars of London, and there's guys, and they have lots of subscribers and lots of viewers, and they're doing kind of different things. So I wonder, I don't know, I guess our generation, we are a product of a time and place where we've kind of seen we've seen the origin of the computer, of the personal computer. We've seen the origin of the smartphone, and when we play games now, we can kind of see it in context, not only of the technology that's currently available, but also of the content that it's able to simulate. For example, I remember, and I'm going to include this in the video, when I was a boy, I had a heavy die-cast Porsche 911. I wish I had it now. There was a white Porsche 911, at least I think it was, and two motorcycle cops. And I remember, I may or may not have known what the car was at the time, but it was a real beauty. And I think as a child I appreciated it, and I know that a lot of young boys traditionally play with cars, but I think maybe it's, like I said, the young people are maybe not so interested in cars, particularly, for example, when they go into their teenage years and the later years. So I think overall, I think we were just many of us are just a product of the time and place we grew up in, and like you said, Alex, and back to you and Mike as well, it's also as well about the nostalgia. Like, for example, to be able to, anytime, like, I can drive a Group E car around Sweet Lamb in Wales, or I can drive around the tracks in Dirt Rally, and these kind of things. So it's like you said, it's the ability to create, and it's also a mix of being able to follow the classic cars, and then the current cars, and then the kind of the whole kind of area of classic to modern, to kind of how it's going, how where it's going in the future, so to speak. So
yes, yes. And speaking of future, by the way, I think first of all, I think you're right that the modern or the current generation of teenagers is probably not that much into cars than
yes.
maybe some previous generations. Maybe that's a misconception. I'm not sure about that, but I do get that feeling. But that being said, surprisingly enough, I love cars like a Tesla.
So do
I
I.
love what they're doing. I love the whole concept. I love the philosophy, and I think I love their performance. And even though there is no engine sound, and even though the emotionality of it maybe is lacking a little bit, I can't help but have a lot of respect for what they can do, and I'm glad that they exist, and I think they will save a lot of fuel for us in the future when we drive a combustion engine car by choice and not because we have to.
I wonder
So,
that.
yeah, yeah.
There's a question now. The Audi literally, as well, I guess it's a marketing trick, if you will. They took the chassis of the car looks like the IMSA car that went to America after Group B ended, and they took the electric concept car from Gran Turismo. I wonder how popular are those kind of cars in the game. I mean, obviously they don't make any sound, and will it be so that, for example, like once Porsche became available, sorry, Assetto Corsa had a Porsche pack, and iRacing had a Porsche pack, and then also we had the Ferrari pack. So at what point then do these electric and hybrid cars, when do they become available in the simulators, and will people be interested in them? I don't know.
That's a good question, actually. Has anybody made a Tesla mod for Assetto Corsa yet?
Yes, there are two of them, although both versions are based on the same 3D model, I believe, and both of them are pretty terrible. I've driven them. They are not realistic at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a very good question. I am fascinated by Teslas. Would I drive them in a sim rather than, I don't know, a 911 or something? That's a very good question. I'm not sure about that, actually.
Yeah, me neither. And of course, there are the Formula E cars in R Factor 2 with this track that's in, was it Hong Kong? Was it so? There was official content. So I never actually tried, and not because I never tried it, not because I'm not interested. I just have so much other content, other DLC, for example, that I bought that I just literally haven't had the time to play. So, and I'm interested in trying it, and I find. I heard somebody talking one day. Somebody mentioned the phrase, it's like Steam paralysis, that you go into your Steam library and you're not sure what game you want to play, and I go through phases where it's all Race Room, and then maybe it's all Assetto Corsa, and then you know, and it's good in the same way that we all try I think we all try and drive as many classes as possible. I think we all try and play as many games as possible. Can I ask you a question? There's a question now that comes to mind. How many games do you actively play? Do you guys play several games at once, or do you go to periods where you might play Assetto Corsa for several weeks and then maybe go to Race Room or go to Project Cars, or how do you actually do it?
Yeah, I think I have 5 in regular rotation now. Let's see, Assetto Corsa, Automobilista, Race Room. I'm not really into iRacing these days. I think there's 5 that I go to, but yeah, definitely it'll just become an obsession of mine. Like, I don't know if you've seen any of my recent videos, but it's all been Automobilista.
Yes.
Like it's funny. I forgot about that game for quite a while, and then I fired it up, and now I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And I ran Project Cars 2 last night, and according to Steam, the last time I drove it was April 16th. So it's been 3 weeks since I've even opened that game.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I had done nothing but Project Cars 2 for a 2-week period. So it's just funny. I don't know. Each game has its appeal, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we've hit a sim yet that does everything right. But I think sim to sim, each has something that it does much better than its competitors, and we're kind of attracted to that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I'm the same way.
Go ahead, Alex.
I usually deep dive into one sim for a while, and then I move on to the next. And as Mike said, there's a certain rotation that has been established right now between, well, in my case, it's probably mostly between Project Cars 2 and Assetto Corsa. I've tried some Race Room here and there. I have not tried Automobilista in quite a while, mostly because it does not have VR support at this point in time, if I am not mistaken there. And I have not tried iRacing in quite a while either. But I'm always on the lookout for new and interesting stuff, which is why I decided to eventually try Forza Motorsport 7.
Yes, that was interesting.
Yeah, I'm happy that I did that, actually, because it was a lot better in a lot of aspects than I would have expected it to be.
I noticed you saying that, yeah.
It is clearly still, or not clearly, but in my opinion, it is still lacking in some handling areas where it just feels a little bit unnatural, kind of like Project Cars 1 did feel a little bit iffy at some points. But yeah, no. So generally, I tend to deep dive into one game or one sim and then switch over.
I got a question for you, Alex.
Go on. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are, the master of oversteer. You're so much better at it than I am, and I imagine you have to really feel your car and know when your traction bites and when you're losing traction and things like that. Do you still get that in Forza 7?
That's exactly the point that is weird in Forza 7. So in Assetto Corsa, for example, it is pretty much like it is in real life. Although the cars tend to lose grip, maybe a little bit too easily in comparison to real life, where you have to work a bit harder, provoke the car a bit more to break loose. But the general behavior of the car over the limit is very well done in Assetto Corsa, and in my opinion, it's still the king when it comes to oversteer.
Yes.
Just the feeling of it is so natural. You feel the weight of the car. You can use the weight of the car to continue the slide and transition from one slide to another. That's just close to perfection. But in Forza 7, there's something weird that happens when you start to slide. It's really hard to put it into words, but it feels like the line between grip and slide is pretty much non-existent in Forza 7, so you're always a little bit unstable. So there's no clear transition between gripping and sliding, and when you slide, it is just very hard to predict what the car is doing. So in my opinion, usually when that is the case, when I really can't really connect to what the car is doing in game, mainly that is because the game does something that the car wouldn't do in real life. Because I have no troubles getting my car to go sideways in safe and controlled environments, of course, in real life. But usually when I felt that in Project Cars 1. That's the best example. I thought, man, is it me or what is happening here? I just can't get a controlled slide with these cars. What's going on? And then I read other people having the same problem with it, and it is so much better in Project Cars 2 in some cars in Project Cars 2.
Yes.
It is still a bit weird in some cars there, but it is, generally speaking, a lot improved in that game. So over the years, when I have felt that I can't really connect with what the car is doing in the game, it's usually because there's something wonky in the physics engine, whatever it might be. So yeah, in terms of Forza 7, it's not quite there yet. And I think what it's missing, at least for wheel users, is that I don't mind it being arcade to a degree, but it should be fun. Yes. I should be able to get the car to do what I want it to do. But that is not really the case in Forza 7. My personal theory is that it's mostly been developed for gamepad users, and that wheel users are a fraction of their user base at this point, maybe not even 10%, and across all platforms. And so I think that might be part of the reason. Maybe the car setups are more, I don't know, are better to control with a controller and are therefore a little bit weird to control with a wheel. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but there is something missing in Forza that is there in Project Cars 2 and in Assetto Corsa.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know what that is exactly though.
And Alex, were you driving Forza 7 on PC with a direct drive wheel?
Yes, I was. I was very happy to see that worked right off the bat.
That's
because that was not. Yeah, it worked really well actually. And I gotta say, the force feedback with the settings that I found on YouTube, I did a video about that and linked the settings in the description. The force feedback is actually very, very good. It's very strong force feedback. It feels very much like a real wheel in a real car feels in terms of the stiffness of the controls.
Yes.
I think that is very good, actually. I was very surprised about that. It's just, and it feels very good right up until you get to the limit and at the limit. But once you go over the limit, that's where it lacks. And that's where it starts to behave weirdly.
Yeah. And it's something that I've noticed, like, Billy Strange is also able to comment on, for example, how, for example, he has done the sprint racing on dirt. Like, he was involved directly with the guys from iRacing developing that, and he was able to say, well, yeah, this feels right, this doesn't, and I have no clue, so I just for me it's pixels on the screen and some audio and hopefully some force feedback, and I can't really say, so I'm not an engineer by it. So it's wonderful that somebody can actually say, well, yes, well, when I'm playing this game, I'm turning, it should break now, and I can, that's a really interesting aspect. Now, we're running on nearly an hour, and I don't want to run too long, and we have so many other things to talk about, but can we finish with a quick summary of, if you had, just the top of your head, if I might ask, your perfect sim, in terms of content and tracks, and what would that be? Just top of your mind, anything at all. What would it contain?
I have thought about that way too much, and I would love to be involved in a project like that. So I will try to keep it very short.
Yes.
I think the technology is not quite there, but in my opinion, software-wise, we would need to use Google Maps and a very clever deep learning algorithm to construct a 3D map out of that. So you would have the whole globe to play with.
Really? Yeah. Cool. You go on, yeah.
Yeah. But of course, again, the technology is not there, but I've seen something like that. So again, Dream Sim, right?
Yes.
What I'm really missing in most Sims is that we are driving a pretty box without any functional parts in there. So what I really would love is to have a fully functioning drivetrain, including moving pistons, moving camshafts, everything like that. So I want to have a fully working engine, so I feel like I'm actually driving a car and not just something that looks like a car and behaves like a car.
Yes.
Organically created engine sounds that change depending on what kind of exhaust you have there, or how the exhaust is routed throughout the car. That would be something that's very important. I think engine sounds are one area in sim racing that have not developed as much as visuals have or physics have, for example, over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
We're still using sample-based engine sounds, which are good, but they will never be great. It's just not possible.
Yeah.
They will never be as organic as a real engine is. Yeah. And soft body physics, so the car can flex and crash like the real thing. And I will stop there. I could say a lot more. One thing I want to add still is that what will bring us to the next level is true G-force simulation. And I don't know if you guys have heard of what was it called? Vestibular galvanic stimulation, where you use little electrodes around your ears to induce a micro a little bit of electricity to your nerves in the inner ear that are responsible for G-forces.
Yeah.
So you can actually use that to induce G-forces basically in your head.
Wow.
So there has been a headset developed by Samsung, I believe, which was called Entrim 4D. You could Google that if you have the time.
Yeah.
And they were playing with that idea. So the idea is that you have a headset that gets the G-force information from the sim, like a motion rig would do, and induces real G-forces in your head, depending on how the car is moving. So I think once we have that in combination with a better VR experience, I think that will be a game changer.
So you're not asking for a lot, really, Alex, are you?
No.
Sorry.
So yeah, I will stop it there. But as I said, I thought about this a lot, and so I just want to drive every car on the whole planet and have it feel like
Google Maps, a fully realized engine drivetrain, with simulated G-forces and VR.
Yes. That's all. It's not too complicated.
And you, Mike, can I ask of you the same question? Any thoughts?
Tough question. I think Kunos might be going the right angle with Competition in that pick one thing and do it well. I think when Sims start to reach out and try and, do a great F1 and also a great GT and also great road cars and also great this and that, it just it dilutes the focus of the programmers. And I think Competition, probably version 1.0, is going to have its bugs and things like that. But if they engage the community and they engage real GT drivers and get, real track data in one specific discipline, in this case, the Blancpain series, and just make that perfect, make it the definitive Blancpain series, or Blancpain simulator, I should say, and just do that better than anybody else on the market. I think that's the way to go. I really do.
Good point. Very good point.
And it comes back to as well, Mike, you said how you the idea, the perfect idea is to watch the event and then go fire up your PC and then go and drive it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that, guys, it's been running over an hour. It's been really, really interesting, and thank you very much. Mike, Alex, do you want to talk about what you've got coming up in your channel in the next couple of weeks, or anything interesting?
Lots of interesting stuff. I will start to record a bit more with the real car, which I'm currently in the process of gathering some hardware for that to make it look really good and stuff. So you can expect something coming in the next months with some real track driving, and I think it should be pretty cool.
Oh, cool. That's interesting. And you, Mike?
I'm just wrapping up. I had a hot lap tournament, and we actually got some sponsorship. There was some prizes.
I saw that. That was really interesting, actually. Yeah.
It turned out really well. There was great support from the community, and there's a lot of calls for me to do another one. So I'll probably do that. But that's wrapping up. It's been a 5-week process, and it's taken a fair bit of my time. So about to put that behind me in the next couple of days, and then I actually don't have any specific direction I want to go with my channel, but there's always a new mod, there's always a new update to my favorite Sims, so we'll see what comes.
Okay, interesting. So
how about you, Davey?
And you nothing. I'm working on something kind of it's like a long editorial piece, so I'm working on that, and it's another Alex. It's 3:00 in the morning, and I'm thinking, oh God, no, that's not a good idea. This is a bad idea. So I'm working on something. Yeah. It's like my magnum opus, so to speak. So when it goes live, you'll know more. But it's kind of a bucket list kind of a thing. So it's kind of interesting, and I'm hoping that I'm kind of writing scripts and cutting some replays, and you sit there and go, oh, what will people think I'm crazy? Will they get the point? Will they? It's like when they say how if you paint a picture, when you start painting, the best way is to walk away and come back and have another look. So I'm hoping that people are able to get the message across. So it's back to what the thing I'm working on now. It's a kind of it's a passion project that I've been spinning over in my mind for a long time, and that's how I kind of tend to come up with things. And then what I'll do is I'll link to your channels in the description, and we'd also ask that if anybody's listening, hopefully they are. If anybody has suggestions for any topics to be discussed, we would appreciate it. So please add those in the comments below, and also feedback on this is our first foray into podcasting, and I'm really glad. Thanks again, guys, for joining. This has been really interesting because I had this idea and I thought, well, Mike's interesting and Alex is interesting. This might work as a format. So I think we've had a really interesting discussion. So, and I think there's room for so much more, and I have a list of topics that we want to talk about, but we can contain those for another time, because we could technically go on for hours, I believe. So
yeah, so I really enjoyed this. I'm looking forward to the next one already.
Yeah. Okay. So next time.